Honda runs. What's going on, guys? Welcome back for our first big episode in our N600 series. We haven't given you any updates on this car in a while, for reasons we don't have to get into here. But basically, life just kept happening last year. Anytime we set a deadline for this car, all sorts of wrenches would be thrown in our plans. And yeah, it took a while to get here, but we never stopped filming. And we're pretty proud of where we are today, running and driving a Honda N600. So this episode's really just to kind of catch you guys all up to date on what it took to get here and what the plans are from here on out. Enjoy. So as you probably noticed, the N600 mostly lives in the corner of the shop. And whenever I have the spare time and motivation, I'll roll it to the middle of the shop and chew on the old task sheet. Sometimes it's meditative work like refreshing and rebuilding brake components. Other times it's mundane work like fitting new ball joints or bushings. Plenty often it's something like having to modify the actual body of the car simply to install a brake master cylinder. But there's never been much of an imperative to get the car finished for any specific date. So anytime I work on it, I just simply end up tucking it back in the corner for any number of months until inspiration would strike again. That is until we got an invite to the Grassroots season opener event last spring, and we promised ourselves we'd get the car done for May 3rd. In a typical fashion, we waited until April 30th to actually dig in on getting that done. Thankfully, we had all hands on deck because, again, this was a shitty year for us, and we really needed a win at the garage. So in a matter of days, we had a ton of work to get done. We needed to make brake lines because everything in the car was either rotten or rusted, like totally unsalvageable. But thankfully, our boy Lyle is a wizard with brake flaring tools and line bending. We also needed to rebuild and install axles, make alignment corrections, make hardware for our shifter linkage, install hardware, refit hardware, cut and weld things that didn't fit right, install fuel lines, a fuel pump, brackets, filters, so on and so on. Just to give you an idea, we really had a lot to get done. Because if 4 days wasn't already a time crunch to begin with, I decided to teach myself how to use fiberglass and Bondo for the first time. Just wanted to make the front lip fit better with the front end of the car. No big deal. Not like that would be some majorly arduous task or take up a lot of time. Well, it did, but I think it came out pretty decent for a first try. There will definitely be a second try, probably a third too. This shit is not easy. Shout out to all the body guys out there. You guys are truly magicians. Oh yeah, I never actually cut and clearance my fenders when I originally installed these flares, so I had to go back and do that too. Piece of cake. So yeah, with the 11th hour approaching, we put together a full team the night before the event to get everything finished enough to show up. However, it quickly turned out that our biggest setback was going to be with our carburetor. We had already taken apart and cleaned the carburetor once, but it ended up sitting on a shelf for so long that for the sake of being thorough, we did it again. And it's my first time dealing with a CV carb like this. Typically you find them on motorcycles. Don't have a lot of experience on motorcycles. Lyle was familiar enough to help out, but also familiar enough to have very little faith in this thing actually working for us. But try as we might, we got the car to turn over and die, and turn over again, run for a few seconds, and then die again, and then not start at all, and then morning came, and we never made it to Grassroots, and that really sucked. However, after a few days of licking our wounds and actually getting some sleep, I had that fire lit me to keep forging ahead. So instead of putting the Honda away to be forgotten about for another season, I decided I wasn't quitting until I got it running, for real. So with the stock carb washing us out to sea, I decided to test a completely different carb on the car and see if we could get something to work. I ended up buying an S&S knockoff carburetor off Amazon to test the theory that we could get the car to run on a healthy car. And before you say, why didn't you just rebuild the one you have, You need to understand that outside of gasket kits and superficial bits like that, it's really hard to find parts for these things. But we'll speak more on that later. Anyhow, next day a Chinese S&S from Amazon got us the momentary results we wanted. A running and driving Honda N600. And that was a very happy day.
Hey!
Once we knew we had a runner, I put together an exhaust from scratch because the guys at the Honda store didn't have any left on the shelf. And since this thing is basically running a little motorcycle engine, what better muffler to use than a vintage D&D slip-on? Not that it's quiet or anything. So yeah, mission complete, sort of. See, ultimately the car isn't going to run on this S&S. And I even went out and bought a genuine Mikuni carb to try that approach, but once again we were left stagnated with a setup that had very little tunability and would always be a problem no matter what angle we approached it from. So I decided to take the carb apart for a third time and discovered that it actually had broken jets, which seemed to go unnoticed in previous haste jobs when servicing this carb. And that really only meant one thing: box it up and send it out to Tim Mings. He had the carb turn around and back in New York in a matter of weeks, and once it arrived, well, let's just say it was a much-needed cherry on top of our entire build. And that basically gives full engine rebuild ownership to Tim Mings, which honestly belongs to him. The man is an absolute legend with these things, and it's really just an honor to have had him help in this process. So thanks again, Tim. So from here on out, it's really just a matter of finishing details. Tuning, oil changes, cleaning up wiring here and there. And that shit's really all easy once you've been through the ringer with a project like this. It's actually starting to become fun again. I might actually end up keeping this thing. But we're not gonna get into all that. I have a lot to think about as far as that goes. But yeah, in the meantime, keep your eyes peeled for this thing this spring. It's just tiny enough that you might miss it going down the street. You'll probably hear it because it's really loud. But yeah, I'm not going to conclude this episode without some beauty footage for you. Our buddy Eric Teddy stopped by the garage recently, just to test out his handle on some Super 16, like real movie shit. So yeah, he shot some amazing stuff for us, and we'll leave you with that. We'll see you all this spring. Thanks for watching.
Take my hand, I'll take your hand, babe. Together we'll get away. This much sadness is too much sorrow. It's impossible for me to stay